This is the Tuesday, July 9th, 2024 meeting of the Carmel Clay Board of Parks and Recreation at the John W. Hensel Government Center. May I have a call of the roll to make sure we have a quorum?
Yes.
Mr. Secretary?
Jonathan.
Here.
Katie.
Here.
James.
Here.
Judy.
Here.
Joshua.
Present.
Jen.
Here.
Mark.
Present.
Lynn.
Here.
Linus. Present. Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I will call the meeting to order at 6:01 and let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will begin with public comments, and we do have the president of the Carmel Clay Park Foundation with us tonight to give a small report about the foundation's work and to present a check. Dan Dutcher, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone.
You need the mic.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you tonight, briefly report on the most recent activities of the Parks Foundation. We had our last meeting a couple of weeks ago, and just like to give you an update on a couple of what I think are very positive developments. First of all, as you recall, last year, in partnership with you, the foundation committed to funding half of this year's salary for our new resource development coordinator. That was about $32,700. If you have not met Carrie Berger yet, boy, I encourage you to do so. She's fantastic, dynamic, very committed, very professional, somebody that I've really enjoyed the chance to work with so far. So just a few things through her efforts to call your attention to. First of all, there are a couple of grants that we've received that are basically have been pass-throughs that have forwarded along to you. There was one for $10,000 that we received from Pros Consulting that's focused on benefiting employee training for the department staff. We also received a grant for $4,200 from Duke Energy. I believe that's been allocated toward theater equipment. We have received a couple of two different groups of memorial donations, one for Jim Ingledow for $1,875 to honor him, and then one to honor the late Jim Dillon, $2,835. So obviously those have also forwarded your way. In terms of new initiatives, just quickly three to keep an eye on. Number one, the NRPA. Thanks, Michael. I couldn't read my own writing. The NRPA has established a grant opportunity, so this is something we'll be applying for, but it's focused on sustainability. Park Department would do it in partnership with another group, and it involves 8 3-hour video conferences. The focus is on sustainability. It's done through application. I believe we'll be applying for it in partnership with you. Hopefully, we could receive news on that as early as this fall. But again, it's 8 3-hour sessions. Somebody from the Parks Foundation would attend those meetings in consultation with someone from the Parks Department staff, multiple folks. It doesn't have to be the same individuals every time. It's sort of a collective effort. But the good news on that is the payoff is $10,000. Again, the focus is on sustainability. Just in addition to me, some other folks from the Parks Foundation board who indicated a willingness to attend one or more of those sessions. Beth Myers, who's our VP, Katie Muller, Leah Coretti, Mike Plater, Mark Varnow, and Kathy Scheidler. So we've got 7 folks who have volunteered for 8 different sessions, so I think we'll be able to accommodate that if we're selected by NRPA, and if we're not selected this time around, there'll be an opportunity to reapply. It sounds like this is going to be continuing grant opportunity through those folks. Second idea that the foundation endorsed, and so hopefully this will be pursued. It's the idea of creating a fun walk or run on a rotating basis through the different parks within Carmel, but it's done on a virtual basis. So you can sign up if you want to commit for a particular walk and or run through a park, so we don't have everybody coming at the same time, and then the particular parks would rotate. That's something else ultimately that could serve as a fundraiser for us, because everybody, to do it, obviously you have to pay a registration fee. So keep your eyes peeled for that one too. Finally, in terms of the topic of invasives and efforts to sort of manage invasive species within the department's various properties, that's sort of been a longer standing commitment by the foundation in partnership with the department. The last few years, our donations have sort of subsided as we sort of have attended to other issues, but we're back to make that commitment to you to help finance those invasive expenditures. Michael's staff computed that you spend about $100,000 a year on invasive species management, so it's a pretty healthy chunk of change. At the last foundation meeting, we committed through one of our funds to commit $20,000 to help to subsidize your invasive species management efforts for 2024. I've got that check for you here tonight. And then we have sort of earmarked another $20,000 for 2025. Our 2025 budget won't be finalized through the end of the year, but the foundation voted to make that commitment as well. So we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with you on that, because that's a topic that's really near and dear to the hearts of several of the foundation board members. Madam President, if there are no questions, I'll be happy to pass the check.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dutcher, and I will let you present the check to, is Eric the keeper of the treasury tonight, or Michael? Who should receive the check? I'll let you folks decide.
I'll take it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate the update. Next is staff reports.
Michael takes the check but hands it to Eric. See how that works?
I don't want to lose it.
Staff reports are included in your packets. Happy to answer any questions you have. I did want to point out that the active contract log is included in your packet this month. We do provide this for review by the park board each quarter. Please take a look at it. Let us know if you have any conflicts. If you do, we do have a process to disclose those. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for the assistant director? Okay. Thank you, Curtis, for that report. We'll move on to the committee reports. Finance Committee, Lynn?
Finance Committee is scheduled to meet in 2 weeks. You can see the information from the director's report, and we will discuss 2025 budget and the every 3-year compensation study. So hopefully we will reach a consensus and present to the board soon.
Thank you, Lynn. Master Plan Review Committee, Jen?
Thank you. We had our first meeting, decided on our plan of attack, our future meetings, and then we reviewed chapters 1 and 2 in the introduction, which are just nice light chapters, so to speak. The rest of the meetings have already been agreed upon and posted. If anyone else is willing or wanted to attend, we have those already laid out. If anyone from the board or public wants to attend those, along with which chapters we'll be discussing in each of those. So, there you go.
Any questions for the chair or of any of the committee members? So the audience for this master plan that we are updating now is the Department of Natural Resources. It's a requirement every 5 years. Is that correct, Michael? And also the NRPA and the CAPRA certification again. So,
Yes, so I should say, right now, we're going through, if you will, editing, the language, sentences, making sure the graphs and stuff are appropriately sized, so on, so forth. So pretty simple stuff right now. As I said, they're pretty light chapters. Once we get, on further into the master plan where we discuss funding needs and, strategies like that, then potentially, others will be invited to those meetings.
any questions? Any report from Strategic Funding Committee?
We have not met at this time. I'm hoping that we'll have some information that may have a meeting sometime in August at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Moving on to minutes. Mr. Secretary?
Yes, I move to approve the minutes of the Park Board meeting dated June the 11th, 2024.
Second.
Linus moved, Jen seconded. Any additions or corrections for the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously carried. Next are the the financial reports from the treasurer. Lynn?
I move to acknowledge receipt of the consolidated financial report for May 2024 and to acknowledge receipt of P&L statements for June 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jen, I'll take you as a second. Any questions of Lynn or the department on the financial reports? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. Now we go to claims. Okay, Lynn, go ahead.
I move to approve the claim sheet dated July 9th, 2024, to approve the Clay Township claim sheet dated July 9th, 2024, and to approve the payroll wages and liabilities for payroll dates June 14th, 2024, and June 28th, 2024. The second date in the recommended motion should be June 28th, 2024.
Second.
Jen seconded. Any questions or discussions regarding the claim sheets or the payroll? And we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Lynn. Oh, Jim, go ahead.
One question back on the minutes on,
Oh.
Michael or Curtis could answer. Central Dora, the Monon Trail is in that, but how much of it?
So that, why don't we cover that under director's report, because that's my director's report as opposed to minutes, if you're
Wait for
comfortable with
that.
that. Yeah. But happy to address it at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. That's a good question.
Madam President,
Yes.
I have a
Linus.
question about the P&L statements for June 2024.
Yes, please ask.
Is the presenter to be Lynn and not Curtis? It says Curtis is the presenter, and she asked for them to be approved.
Okay, Linus, I'm lost a minute.
You with me on that?
At the top.
On the cover sheet?
Yeah, he prepares them, so he's always the presenter. She makes the motion
didn't-
to approve them.
Okay. Fair enough.
So we need to,
No.
we don't,
good.
No.
we're good. Okay. All right, thank you. Now monetary gifts, grants, partnerships, and sponsorships for June. Eric?
Thank you. We had 4 contributions this last month. Again, credit towards Carrie, our resource development coordinator, as Mr. Dutcher kindly presented as well. So she's been working hard on a lot of these things. So first off, we had another sponsorship for our water park cabanas. for $1,500 from Java House Coffee Shop. We had a donation from Ace Paving scrap metal for $151.25 for general park maintenance. A additional sponsorship from Pure Green Caramel for the water park cabanas for $1,500, and a donation from our anonymous donor of $100 towards staff appreciation.
Madam President,
Yes, Josh?
I think it's great that these local businesses are contributing to the Cabana project. Whose great idea was this Cabana thing, by the way?
Anonymous.
I mean, I'll take some credit, but no. It's been an ongoing conversation between Carrie and I of different strategies on how to bring in some more, community partners and things. So
It's a great way to get community businesses to invest in our system. These aren't small dollars, but they're, hopefully they're not painful for businesses, and it's also a way for them to be vested in what we do. So, Madam President, I motion that we take these monies as quickly as we can to the bank and cash them. And always a big thank you to our office.
Second.
Jen seconded that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting the gifts signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimously approved. Okay, now, new business. Curtis, you are on for the first one, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, I am requesting that the Park Board consider a bid to convert the Monon Boulevard splash pad from a recirculating system to a non-recirculating or direct-to-waste system. I do want to note that this request is contingent upon funding by the City of Carmel to the Parks Capital Fund 103, which you will see in the motions that are recommended. As you are all likely aware, our department maintains the splash pad along Monon Boulevard that was developed by the City of Carmel. And over the last several years, our department has identified several operational and safety-related issues that we hope to rectify by having it converted to the direct-to-waste system. First and foremost, operationally, we've had challenges since the first day the department inherited the splash pad. Likely, this was attributed to flooding of the mechanical room vault during construction. This has led to numerous repairs of motors in our UV system by our department over the years, just to keep the system operational. It's taken ongoing and repeated maintenance just to have it run daily. Because the system utilizes chlorine, our team has to make repeated visits to the site to ensure that chemical levels are properly maintained. Additionally, the chemical storage vault, which you can see in the third photo of your attachments, is right along the Monon Greenway. And when staff add chlorine to the vat, it creates a large chlorine cloud that poses a safety risk. It's not a good look when our team is in full safety gear, putting chlorine into the vault, and the trail is open to the public, and they're fully exposed while we're adding those chemicals. And last but not least, the main control vault, which you can also see in your photos, is in a hazardous location located between the walking and bike path. And we've had several near misses with pedestrians and children who are distracted or just aren't paying attention, almost falling into the vault. A lot of children, our staff have also said that a lot of children will approach the vault when it's open, thinking that it's a play structure, wanting to climb inside. And you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like from the attachments. Our department engaged Rondell Ernstberger Associates, or REA, for assistance with construction documents and bid solicitation. REA was also the architect for the original development of the space. With their assistance, we developed plans to convert the splash pad to a non-recirculating system, which would allow the chemical storage vault to be removed completely. The savings from not having to add chlorine to the system would be offset, I just want to point this out, would be offset by the cost to provide city water to the system, or by utilizing city water. While the mechanical room would still remain, our hope is that the safety would be improved due to less frequent repairs and less frequent visits by staff to the site. And on June 26, 2024, we received a bid from United Construction. As you're likely aware, we've worked with them on a couple of projects now, including at West Park for the trail construction along the 116th Street and also the shelters. Their bid was in the amount of $797,000. and staff, with the assistance from our REA, reviewed the bid documentation and confirmed that they are the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and we are recommending acceptance of this bid. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Other questions? Mark?
Curtis and Michael and Eric. Without beating a dead horse, which I'm about to do, is there a way or a plan in place to which to highlight this particular disaster along with other disasters of park-like properties that have been developed by the CRC? To maybe to the city and to city council. I mean, this is a prime example of why urban planners might not be qualified to actually get involved in the design of park properties.
I have used previous reports to the council to highlight the challenges with this particular project, as well as some of the other challenges we've had, especially as we're going through the park impact fee conversations and beyond with that. When requesting the budget appropriation for the 103 fund, it was very clear as to this was a project that was not designed and involved any of our input in the design phases. It was something that was handed to us and certainly inherited. They've heard that multiple times, but I will continue to use every appropriate opportunity to also reinforce that when it comes to parks, maybe the park professionals in the community understand what works best and what doesn't, and should be always included at the table to ensure that if it's a park, it's designed to actually accommodate the public most appropriately and most cost effectively.
My memory, and I appreciate that, Michael, I think my memory is such that a number of us back then were involved in telling the city that this was a really bad idea. And it went on deaf ears at the time. I know Eric was involved. I know I had been involved with him as well, to point out the pitfalls of this design and why we wouldn't recommend it, nor did we think it was the right way to go, but that didn't seem to slow down. So now we're at a point of spending almost another $1 million to repair something that was improperly designed and constructed. It would be interesting to know how much money has been wasted on CRC projects because of the shoddy designs and workmanship. But that's all I have to say on it.
Any other questions?
Question?
Linus?
If this is approved, when does the work begin?
They're actually going to start right after Labor Day. So typically, that's a great question. Typically, our splash pads are open until September 30th. But because there's so much work that needs to be done, we would actually close this one right after Labor Day, and they would begin construction. Hopes to have it done before the freeze thaw or the freeze.
6 weeks?
It's going to be longer than that. I think it's more like 12 to 14 possibly.
So really before it gets cold, real cold out?
Before the ground freezes is the hope.
Before the ground freezes?
Yep.
Is this going to change the layout of like the limestone blocks?
No, it will not.
Yeah, we're truly only impacting the guts of the system, if you will, not the external appearances of it.
It was designed to be a fountain. They used the fountain company Delta to come up with the design, and really we're converting it to a splash pad is what we're doing. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? So the vault, though, is going to stay there, and is that,
Yeah, correct. The main vault will remain. The motors and the UVs will no longer be used, and they'll use manifolds and city water pressure to operate the splash pad, basically. It'll be the manifolds will control the sequencing.
We'll still have some electronic components that are below ground, if you will, but it'll be significantly less, and it's a much simpler system to operate than what exists there
Yeah,
today.
the team won't need to visit the site near as frequently as they do now, so getting into the vault won't be something that they're doing on a regular basis.
Okay. Linus, go ahead if you have another question. So we're done with the chlorine loading and all of that?
No more chlorine.
No more
Yep,
chlorine?
it would just be using city water.
Yeah, okay. And it says contingent upon receiving the funding. to
Correct.
do
So
that.
the-
So, yeah.
The funds have been appropriated by the city council as part of the 2024 budget approval process. They have not yet fully been released by the administration. So I've made a request. They released just under 600,000 of our $2 million 103 budget appropriation. And I've made a request for the release of the additional little over $1.4 million, but told them that at minimum, we need released immediately $850,000, which will cover all of the construction, this contract, as well as the owner's representative components of the contract, so,
Okay. And that money is already budgeted in the 103?
yes.
Okay.
So a budget appropriate, so don't need council approval, I just need the money.
Right. The cash flow. Okay. Any other questions before we entertain the motions? Okay, but entertain motion number 1.
Madam President,
Yes.
I move to
Jonathan?
authorize the bid from and award a contract to United Construction in the amount of $797,000 for modifications to the Monon Boulevard splash pad contingent upon funding from the City of Carmel, and authorize the director, the assistant director, and the Park Board legal counsel to take all actions necessary to complete the contracting process.
Okay, Linus is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of motion 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Motion number 2, Jonathan?
Madam President, I move that the Park Board delegate the director and assistant director the authority to determine, in conjunction with the engineer, whether it is in the best interest of the board and the department to add or change an item or items in the contract with United Construction, and to approve each change order in an amount not to exceed his purchasing authority, and in accordance with the applicable Indiana law regarding change orders, with report to and ratification by the Park Board at a subsequent meeting.
Is there a second? Jen? Is there any further discussion? Questions? All those in favor of motion number 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you, Curtis. All right, the next item under new business is the Land and Water Conservation grant application. Eric?
Thank you. As we've kind of mentioned at previous park board meetings, the department is seeking a grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, so the LWCF. We're going to be applying for $1 million worth of that grant. The grant will require a minimum of an equal match that is planned to be funded during the 2025 budget process. If we're awarded, the LWCF program will apply protective covenants on the deed for Bear Creek Park, making it federally protected in perpetuity and securing the land for solely outdoor recreation purposes within the community. As a requirement to the application, an early coordination and environmental assessment of the project and the property has been conducted by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources and provided within your packet for review. So that's the attachment along with this cover sheet. So as a part of the requirements to apply for this, that needed to be done, but also needs the board to recognize that it was done and that it has been reviewed. It gives a general overview of our project. Additionally, since the park board is the official applicant of the grant, certain application documents are required to be signed by the board president and/or the secretary as designated on the applications. So in order to do that, we'd like the board's support in this application, as well as allowing the president and secretary to sign off on the application documents that we need. Once those are finalized and drafted, the application's due August 1st, so towards the end of this month.
Okay. So there's not a motion attached with the paperwork you've given us, so it's a motion to acknowledge the application?
There should be on the cover sheet.
Excuse me, did I miss it?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if someone wants to combine those
Yeah.
into a single motion, they're welcome to.
I move that the park board acknowledge support for the application of the LWCF grant for Bear Creek Park. That the park board acknowledge receipt of the early coordination environmental assessment report provided by the Indiana Department of National Resources. And that the park board president and secretary to sign any required documents related to the application for the LWCF grant for Bear Creek Park.
Yes. Thank you. I flipped over my page, Eric, I'm sorry. I was looking for it on the back of the grant application. Any further questions? Lynn?
This is a great opportunity. So I'm just curious if the grant was awarded, so the park will get $2 million in total, right? 1 million plus 1 million matching.
So-
What do we use the money for to secure the productive covenant? Is that, do we use it to cover the previous purchase of the land, to cover the environmental study? What do we use it to get that
So,
federal
so
protection?
the grant would be $1 million or up to $1 million. We would need to match the other,
Uh-huh.
would need to match that, so we would need to provide at least $1 million. So that will be asked for within our budget process for 2025. So that'll give us at least $2 million, if not more, depending on how much else, the department
Right.
wants to put forward towards a project. We were able to use as a part of our match funding that we've already spent. So on the master plan, for example, the money that we spent developing the master plan with Smith Group, that counts towards our match, towards that $1 million that we have to match, as well as a couple other things, environmental studies and different things that we've done. The purchase of the land or the acquisition of the land does not count towards any matching of the grant, but things that we have put into it, any kind of land development that we've done thus far, that can count towards that match. But the plan is to use the funding that we receive then to basically kind of kickstart the park, do a phase 1 of the park development. So development of an entry drive, parking lot, potentially a shelter or trails, things like that. So we're working out the details on what exactly that will fund, but that's the.
Great. And if I remember correctly, we forecast the construction cost of the park to be around $5 million. So this, right?
Total cost of the master plan is actually about 30 million, but
30.
each phase is around $5 to $6 million, so that's probably what you're remembering. What I'm hopeful to do, we'll use those other funds that are eligible for the match to show that we're making a greater than 1-to-1 match, which may help us as far as scoring for the grant. We are putting a $1 million grant or budget request, or that's what we're recommending for the 103 non-reverting park capital fund for the city to provide $1 million. But I'm also hopeful that we would be able to provide some funding potentially from impact fees that we've collected to enhance, so that we're providing, I'd like to get us as close to $5 million, should we, including any grant dollars that we receive, so that we can have truly an impactful first phase for Bear Creek, because it's such an underserved area of the community.
Thank you very much for explanations.
Thank you.
And in the short term, if we don't receive that, we've already got money invested. Is it enough to do anything other than a driveway? or-
If we get $1 million, obviously, again, we'd have to make sure that we are full up for another $1 million. Yeah, we can, if it's around $2 million, it's probably a parking lot and it's probably trails, which does provide some valuable recreational benefits. But to get a component for that first playground, we've got to be closer to I would say at least $4 million to have something has a playground component as well.
Okay. And so what we already have invested equals about, what do you think? Is it $250,000 probably?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
At least,
Um,
okay.
With the master plan, which was definitely around 150,000, if I'm going off the top of my head, and with the other investments, I would say we're close to $250,000 already invested.
Okay. But we're going to ask for $1 million.
Yeah, which is the
For the
maximum amount we
match.
can.
For the
Yeah.
grant, but I mean,
We're asking the city for a full $1 million.
a full million, okay. Okay, any other questions? Mark?
Michael, I know with the deed restriction, we can't put any indoor spaces on the property. I assume we're going to keep the pavilion that's planned in the master plan. We're going to keep that out.
Yeah, what we've already done, we've worked to basically, and are in the process of submitting documentation to partial out that. So when we purchased the land, we consolidated and created one parcel, but based on feedback from DNR, we are actually going to create two separate parcels. We've already talked with DOCS, with the city, and we don't have to go through any hearings and stuff because they view it as an administrative process here. So that way, it doesn't preclude us from being able to, in the future, to construct the building out there. But yeah, if we didn't do that, it would probably make it next to impossible to do so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Excellent question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Michael, I can't recall the name of the DNR department head that used to oversee it. First name was Bob, and the last name.
Bob Bronson,
Yeah, Bronson. Is he still involved?
he is retired.
That's unfortunate. So who replaced him? Do you,
Do you remember?
I don't. We had a walkthrough with them though, and they were they loved the property. It was a very productive walkthrough, for sure. But yeah, I don't recall their name.
okay. And on this particular project, for when you ask for $1 million, can they come back and say, no, but we'll do it, we'll give you 100,000? I mean, is there
They
an alternative for them to come back at a lower figure so that we can still get
Yeah,
something and to protect the property?
They can choose to award less than our requested amount. Of course, we can choose whether or not it's viable for us to accept that if there's too many restrictions. But yes, that can happen. There are some occasions if there are not enough other agencies that either have applied for LWCF and/or have the means to do the matching. There are some rare occasions where the state will actually grant more than the $1 million if they have the money available, but just don't have other projects to spend it on. But I would hate to bank on that. But again, if they were to provide us more, we would certainly work to ensure that we could take more.
So from a percentage standpoint, is this a pretty high percentage that we'll walk away with some type of grant?
I don't know. The state recently changed the means by which they score projects. Before, it was a very definitive, you could sort of score it out. I don't know. I honestly don't. I feel very optimistic. As Eric said, the two staff members with DNR that are now involved with administering the grant program were very excited about the project. I mean, it's like almost anyone that we've taken out to Bear Creek. When you look at it on a satellite, it looks like a typical almost farm field in Indiana. But when you get out there, you see the incredible potential. And I think they also really like the master plan. the focus on, again, environmental stewardship, which is part and parcel with Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation's DNA. They liked, just the overall feel of it. So I'm optimistic, but having not, since Flowing Well was our last DNR Land and Water Conservation Fund recipient, last and first, I don't know.
And like Michael said, they had a scoring system that was based off of, like if you were going to put basketball courts in, that got you 2 points. If you were putting in, trails, number of miles was worth a point. So you kind of have to tailor your design almost around what would score you the most points. They've gotten rid of that, and now they're judging more on how well it relates to the SCORP, to the state's plan, and so based on Carrie's analysis and doing the application, she feels even better about that because our overall natural, state of the park of how we want to keep the park is actually going to probably score us better than maybe it would have before. So there's that. They did also increase the grant allotment. It was not $1 million when we were first looking at it, when we first had conversations with DNR. And then they recently were like, we're going to up it to $1 million for the maximum match or the maximum ask. So that's kind of a good sign too, that they received more money, I guess, or something.
That's all good sign. I mean, in the days that Bob was there and I dealt with him on these, they had their scoring system, but they didn't use it. He basically said, if it's anything other than a trail, you weren't going to get it funded regardless back then. So it sounds like they've really opened up what they're looking at from a standpoint of how the land is being used. And that has obviously a lot of wetland as well as an existing prairie that's really, really in good shape out there. So
Absolutely.
that's very encouraging. Thank you very much.
The other thing that makes me encouraged to, at least my recollection from the walkthrough we had on the park site, was that there's also a greater focus on public input. And obviously, we had a very robust public input process for it. And what drove the master plan was what the public said they wanted. So I'm hopeful that also our commitment to engaging the public and designing based on the public's desires will be something that helps us. So I feel optimistic, but having been, this essentially being a new thing for us, I certainly don't want to bank it until we have positive news from DNR.
It sounds very positive compared to the past. So. Good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? One more question. Yes, Lynn, go ahead.
So when do we know the result of the application?
So the application's due on August 1st. My recollection is that it's probably the end of the year before we potentially hear something that could be the beginning of next year. So it's something that at best will be probably the end of this year.
Thank you.
Is this the first land and water conservation funding that's been available?
There's been, LWCF has been available in previous years. There were maybe a few years where it wasn't, or the dollars were more limited. It's just that it's the first time that we've made a major effort to apply for one in quite some time.
Or we have a project that fits? Yeah, 'cause
Correct.
I thought
Yes, there are a number of projects that we would have loved the money, but they just, based on the scoring criteria they had, they weren't viable.
Okay.
And by having that resource development coordinator really helps to have somebody focused, because it's going to take a lot of management too, because that's the other part of these grants is then all the follow-up that happens afterwards. So it's a lot of staff time to manage a grant that's federally funded like that, so.
Yeah, a lot of paperwork. That might have been the biggest part of Flowing Well was the paperwork. Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Jen and a second by Linus. Motions 1, 2, and 3 combined. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All 3 carried unanimously. Okay, Michael, under old business, we have ratification of a amendment to a professional services agreement. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judy. Tonight I'm requesting the Park Board ratify my action to amend the professional services agreement with SJCA in the amount of $23,430 for the White River Greenway North Extension Project. SJCA is our engineer of record for the North Extension Project for the White River Greenway. As we've been going through this, obviously this is a project that has extended longer than I certainly anticipated, and certainly longer than the design team anticipated, which has contributed to some additional cost. They also did do some additional work, including creating more perspectives as we were evaluating the overlook, which is one of the key features of it, which was really very important in helping us understand what it was going to look like, what was going to work best, and how it integrated into the project. So it was money well spent. Identifying the appropriate railing for that. And again, you almost needed those renderings to truly get a grasp for what it looks like. Some mock-ups of the entry signs, as well as we're going to have a custom designed boulder. It's actually not a true boulder, which is what I wanted, but a created boulder that's also going to have some graphic reliefs in it so that people can kind of get a feel for what the river and riparian area looks like. So we worked pretty extensively with that. And then very significantly, just the fact that this project has been extending longer, not so much because of issues with the design team, but the coordination with Conner Prairie as far as securing the easement, working through the grant process and everything. So that's contributed to the cost. I worked closely with David Ford with CTI, who is our owner's representative on this project. We did negotiate the amount. The amount they originally requested was higher, and we felt that the amount that we landed on, $23,430, was an appropriate and fair amount for the services that were provided. So as a result, I did sign it under my authorization, but as required for any public works project, we do need ratification by the Park Board. So requesting that tonight, and happy to address any questions the board may have.
Okay, let's enter the motion.
Madam President,
Jonathan?
I move that the Park Board ratify the action of Director Klitzing and accept Amendment 1 in the amount of $23,430 to the SJCA Professional Services Agreement for the White River Greenway North Extension.
Second.
Okay. Joshua seconded. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Was part of this due to sort of the back and forth with the city as the whole thing went through approval? Conner Prairie went through
Not so
approval
much.
process?
The city really doesn't have any culpability in this particular cost overruns. I would say greater culpability goes with Conner Prairie.
Okay, okay. But it was useful in the end?
It was
to have
useful in
all
the end.
this. Okay.
Yeah. We're getting, it was beneficial for the project. The things that were related to the overlook specifically has nothing to do with Conner Prairie. That was us working on getting the product that we felt was appropriate to meet our standards. Just the length of the project is where there's maybe a little culpability with Conner Prairie. And I guess you could say they held off on moving forward with the easements because of the length of time it did to get their PUD approved by the city. But I don't really want to blame the city because I think the city did what was appropriate for the process.
Okay, so it's all good. Okay, any further questions? Okay, then we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Attorney's report. Mr. Nicely.
Yes, just an update, excuse me, on a few things we've been working on for you all. First, we finalized several special purchase documents. We worked with staff to complete that. We're still working on the Lucky Climber contract. The 106th Street Bridge project donation agreement is still pending. We're waiting on a Delaware Township to sign off on that one. We also worked to finalize a handful of contracts, including Innovista and Bomar, I believe is pronounced, for the Bison installation. And then we worked with staff on the Bear Creek grant as far as the parceling out of the property. And finally, the Higher Ground donation agreement we've been working with the real estate group that's purchasing that property. They were supposed to close on June 15th. They ended up not closing, so we're still in communication with them to get that finalized, and we'll have an update for you shortly.
Okay, any questions for the attorney? Okay, thank you very much. Director's report, Michael?
Thank you. Distributed before the meeting, and also I sent to your emails this afternoon, is my written director's report. Happy to address any questions you have regarding that. I will highlight a couple items on it. First, our October Park Board meeting is scheduled at the same time that the National Recreation and Park Association's annual conference this year in Atlanta is scheduled. So we'll be needing to look at an alternative date for the October meeting. I'm having Sandy reach out to the township to identify what dates this room is available for the meeting. So once we know those, we'll reach out to the board to identify which date works best for a majority of the board to schedule that meeting. So be on the lookout, and as soon as you see that, please respond as quickly as possible so that we can lock up that date. Also, I do want to mention that at the last meeting, of course, we had our visitor that was doing the review for our reaccreditation through the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies join us virtually. We did on Friday, I believe it was, last week, receive the record of review from our visit team, and I am pleased to report the efforts of the department resulted in no missed standards, so we met all 154 standards. We don't officially become reaccredited until the commission meets at the NRPA meeting in Atlanta, so it's not official until October. But because we're a reaccrediting agency and because we met all the standards, we'll be on the consent agenda, so it's all but a formality. So pleased to report that. I want to thank Curtis and the entire team for their efforts to prepare for that reaccreditation, and also the efforts of the Park Board that approves policies and procedures that relate to that. Yes, Jim?
How many parks in Indiana?
In Indiana, the only accredited agencies currently include Bloomington, Indianapolis, and us. So South Bend used to be accredited, but they let theirs lapse. And Fort Wayne also used to be accredited, and they let theirs lapse a number of years ago. So it's the three of us.
I haven't said this in a long time, but cue the balloons and streamers.
Rightly so.
Speaking of the bison, we're very excited about that. The bison are in Indiana. They're currently in storage at Bomar's facility in Indianapolis. I have not seen them in person, but I'm super excited to do so. We are working closely with Bomar, which is the company the city has historically used for the placement of their sculptures and statues throughout the city, especially the larger ones, so they're well qualified for this. And I also want to thank Clay Township, because the actual placement of the pad that it's going to be located on and contracts for moving and placing it with Bomar is actually going to be paid through some of the Clay Township Impact Program bond proceeds. So that won't be coming out of park funds. But we're super excited about that. Don't have specific dates yet. We are working with Dominique Benhura, who is the sculptor that's coming from Zimbabwe. He has some final touches that he'll be doing, and if all goes well, it'll be before the end of this month. So again, be looking for notifications. We'll keep you posted. If possible, we're hoping to bring maybe some of our campers so that they can interact with the sculptor, but the timing's going to be real close towards the end of camp, so we'll see. But super excited about that. I think they will be the coolest sculptures in the city, but I might be biased. And then, yeah, I know Jim was asking questions about the door, so happy to address that question before I take other questions.
Well, the question was, does it extend for the full 5 miles of the Monon Trail, or is it?
No, so as the ordinance that has been introduced to council for consideration is it only includes the portion within the central core of the city. So it's going, the first road north of Main Street is the northern boundary. Carmel Drive is the southern boundary. And then on the west, it's Third Avenue on the southern part, and then, of course, there's that jog, and then Third Avenue becomes Fourth Avenue Southwest. So that's the western boundary. And then the eastern boundary is generally in between. I know I wrote it in here, but is a couple roads to the east of Range Line, but it jets out a little bit as you get close to Carmel Drive. So that it incorporates the
Veterans Way.
Veterans Way is included in there. Yes.
Are we going to put any trash containers out in that area?
So we have a number along the Monon. I think if this is ultimately approved by council, and I think there's a high probability it will, I think we're going to have to evaluate if there's a need for additional trash receptacles along the Monon. Beyond the Monon and areas that are under our management, the city would have to determine that for those, because I'm not going to provide trash cans beyond the Greenway. But I think that's something that has to be factored into the discussions.
I raised this issue with one council member who's in support of this. As I understand, they're all in support of it. And his response to me was that the law, publicly, they could do that now by state law.
I'm not sure I can speak to state law. I do know.
Attorney.
Yeah.
I've always been under the impression that they could do it, thank you. But I could get back to you on that one, but it seems a little redundant to have the door. I've always under the impression that you could have open container.
I mean, you defined an area, but if he's right, then the whole township's.
I think one of the things, as I understand the DORAs, designated outdoor refreshment areas, for those that don't know what DORA stands for, is that it's a mechanism by which not only can you carry it, but you can purchase it from entities that are participating in it, and then you can also not only take it outside their business into this district, if you will, but you can also take it into other businesses that agree to allow you to bring the alcohol in. So I think there may be some semantics on it that extend beyond what people can do under state law currently.
Well,
But
right now at where term skips me, but the outdoor area.
Midtown Plaza?
Yeah, Motown. They buy their drinks inside and bring them outside.
That is correct.
That's kind of a different thing, though. I mean, if I'm on Main Street and I buy a drink at Monterey and I leave Monterey and Basbo's is okay with the DORA, now I can walk into Basbo's with my drink,
Correct.
which you couldn't do before.
Right.
But I think there was also some stipulations about events, because I know that one of my other hats, they asked me some questions about it, but what I said, as it applies to that event, that's a totally different liquor license. What do they call that? A farm license or something like that, or a small vendor license or something?
I forget the technical name for it. I do know that, that's an excellent point, that one of the things that is driving it is the state did encourage the city to do this to help with the permitting as it pertained to Chris Kendall Mark. So that I think was the original impetus for council and for the city to consider establishment of a DORA, is that there was some encouragement to do so by the state. I've heard that in other meetings. I wasn't the direct party to that, so I could be misquoting that, but that is my understanding, is one of the driving
I
factors.
think you're right, and the complexities with the Chris Kindle Mart is, like, if I'm hosting Porch Fest, for instance, and I bring a vendor in, they get a license for like the day. But it's complicated when you're there for like the month. So I think that that's kind of some of the nuances they were trying to clean up.
Joshua,
Yes, sir.
I did pose that question about Porch Fest in regards to Dora to our president of city council, and they said that Porch Fest does not come under the umbrella of the Dora because there's no retail establishments in the area of Porch Fest.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I can't walk from Monterey to your house either with a drink, even if you are okay with that.
I hadn't stopped you before.
He's joking. Anybody is he's joking. No, but we've talked this, probably ad nauseum. But Porch Fest is the example is that those vendors get their own license for the day, so the door doesn't affect me. Doesn't help me at all.
Now, Jim, there was another component, state law, it sounds like, is permissive as you were talking about, but there is existing city code that explicitly prohibits alcohol on any portion of the Monon Greenway. So there's a second ordinance that's being considered part and partial with the DORA ordinance that would rescind that restriction on any portion of the Monon that is within a duly approved DORA. So the council is cognizant of the fact that their own ordinance currently has restrictions that would have to be considered, because you could have, as the DORA is, it's pretty much the middle line. So if they don't rescind that, you can't walk across the Monon to do what they're saying the
Well,
DORA would
since
permit.
this park,
It's in the park rules, but it's in city code.
that means in the Central Park, you cannot drink on the Monon.
That is correct. Actually,
But
technically,
they're
you
going to
can't
change
drink
that. Yeah.
Yeah, technically, so one of the other items that's in my written report is that we're in the process of doing a review of the park rules as approved by the park board, which are what we have posted typically in shorter hand and have on our website, which governs park usage. And then there's city code, which largely mirrors the park rules, but there are some variances. More so areas where the park board has decided to provide a little bit more clarification as to what the rules should and should not permit. One of the things that I've been wanting to do for several years, recognizing those differences, and Curtis is helping lead this task for me, is we're doing a comprehensive review of all the park rules versus the city code that is what the police are able to enforce or not enforce. And what we're going to be doing is making recommendations to any amendments that we are proposing to bring them into concurrence. That way, the police can truly enforce the park rules without question, and they're one and the same. And then creating a process to ensure that any recommended changes that the park board has for the rules go to council. Because again, I want to keep congruence between those, because that helps with legal enforcement.
Could I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at this Administrative and Planning Division Gift Fund 853, and it looks like we've spent hardly anything, and we're halfway through the year.
That's one where we typically don't have a lot of expenditures in that particular fund until we have designated projects. Some of those, like the grant that we just received from the foundation, will go in there. Until those projects are funded, it'll just sit in this and earn interest. We do keep somewhat of a balance in this one. Like we have funds in there. A good portion of those funds right now are based on the easements that we sold in Bear Creek Park, and they're dedicated for projects in Bear Creek Park. So until we do something, we're holding on that money until we actually do development, and we'll use that to supplement.
What about staff professional development?
That's one that is another grant that we received that was intended to, it's going to be helping fund some of our software. And the software has annual payments, so we just haven't paid out of that yet.
So Jim, the gift fund is a non-reverting fund. So the money is put in there for specific items, and you have leeway on when you spend it. I mean, it can't stay in there for forever, but it protects it from, you know, yeah, just reverting into your general fund. So it's a non-reverting. Because I know you know what those are from your time on
But
council.
The James Engeldow Memorial, what's that going to be?
So we'll use that for continued, we purchased and have some commemorative signage in West Park, in the area of the park that we call Jim Engeldow Commons. So any additional improvements, landscaping we make in that area, we'll use these to help contribute towards that.
Any other highlights, Michael, or questions?
Mr.
Mark,
Westermeyer.
Go ahead.
I have a couple questions. I'll start with the Buffalo. And I hope this works out much better than the last thing I was involved with for Arts in the Parks, which was with William Arnold, who did the buffalo down at the zoo, but created the flying insects for us. So, anyway.
Well, technically, ours is going to be an American bison, so, because the buffalo are a Asian variety of animal, so.
Duly noted.
Oh,
The
okay, now,
insects did fly. They fortunately didn't stab any young children in the process.
They look really nice in administrative offices.
Yes, they
Yeah.
do.
they do look nice. Are you referring to the art pieces from many years ago that were at West Park?
Yes,
That
William Arnold,
sailed through the
who
air?
did that design,
Oh, okay.
also
I
was
did-
the person who did the buffaloes at the zoo.
Oh, okay. No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's still missing. The last I heard, he was north of Taos somewhere with some llamas, but
I'm sure he's happy.
sure, he's very happy. A question on the water park. Filtration system for the leisure pool, Eric. Any issues this year?
Not that I'm aware of thus far. Last summer, right, we had the media replaced within those filters, and did a different type of media in there. So I think that's probably helped some. But I know they had some issues the very first couple days that they opened, with it being a busy couple days. But since then, I haven't heard any other major issues.
Hadn't heard anything since then, but I was just curious as the summer's gone on and the temperatures increased, whether that problem exhibited itself again.
Yeah.
So if not, then I guess we are very fortunate. So,
The lines look quite long outside the pool on the hot days. It rained again all day today, so.
Attendance continues to be robust, especially on the good days, so, yes.
All good news for, okay.
All good news for revenue and cost recovery.
my last comment would be going back to the DORA. Is city council aware of the covenants on the Monon with all the homeowners that prevent what they're talking about, in addition to the?
I do not know. I will make sure that they're aware of those, or at least pass that information along so that they are aware of
They
the
might,
restricted
because
covenants.
we already had a lawsuit over that a number of years ago because of that violation of alcohol on the Monon.
I'm guessing that this is all the urban portion, though, that would not have homeowners, Mark, because that's how that sort of ended up getting, you know, the right
Well,
guardrails put on it.
That's where the question becomes very interesting, Judy.
Oh, is it?
Because while the homes were sold, I don't believe the CRC ever got rid of the covenants when the property was sold. So the covenants go with the property. And while you may not have homeowners, whoever owns those properties would still have that covenant in place.
It's worth a look-see, just to make sure. Yeah,
We'll point that
It
out.
might keep them out of difficulty.
yeah.
I will point that out so that we'll let their legal counsel incur the cost for this one, because the
Excellent.
covenants are with the city.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions for Michael on his director's report? Go ahead, Jen.
Since we were talking about sculptures, do you have any update on our red-tailed hawk?
I have not received any update. I do notice that there's some work occurring there,
Yeah.
so I'm hopeful that that means that it's proceeding. But Joshua, I know that maybe, since that's
Who's
being.
in charge of that? The city, obviously, right? Street department, or who?
The city broke it off as a contract with College Avenue reconstruction.
Okay,
The base is moving forward. I drove by it. I see that it's moving forward. I don't think we have a delivery date for the Hawk, if that's really your question. I mean, the Hawk's done.
it's done.
I've heard that there's been eyes on it. I heard it looks really cool. But until the base is done, the Hawk's not
Can't
going.
put out there.
My guess is before the end of the summer though. Moving along.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? Okay, then we'll move along to information items. Plan Commission, Josh, do you have anything?
Nothing exciting,
Okay.
just normal stuff.
Katie, School Board?
Yeah. So two things. First of all, more personal is I announced that I will not be running for re-election in November. So I will be ending my 8 years on the Carmel School Board in December. So it's very bittersweet. So there will be an election this November during the presidential for two more board members on the board. One of my final goals came to fruition last night, where we announced that our superintendent, Dr. Beresford, will be retiring at the end of this coming school year, so in the summer of 2025. And we also announced that we will have a successor superintendent. Our current assistant superintendent, Dr. Tom Ostrike, will be taking over for him as superintendent at that time. So we're very, very excited about our transition plan, about the continuation of the success of Carmel Clay Schools, and I'm really excited for Dr. Ostrike and what he'll bring. So, yeah, big day yesterday.
That was. Thank you. The Parks Foundation, Dan Dutcher gave the update earlier during the public speak, so there's nothing to add to that. Climate Action, Eric, that's you, I think?
We did have a meeting last month. We are meeting pretty regularly, monthly. Nothing super crazy to report to the board, though. The committee as a whole is just kind of still a newer committee, and with a new administration and fairly new city council as well, still trying to kind of figure out their role and everything, and driving some initiatives. But I think this last meeting, we actually had a pretty good conversation about how to push some of those initiatives forward and getting some people on board in the right departments and stuff. So, so hoping to see some things start to move.
I watched that one on, or at least part of it, on Facebook or wherever they show up periodically, just to watch a little bit. And I had asked you about the light pollution. I don't know, it does not look like that is remotely on their agenda. However, I noticed in the report for the Land and Water Conservation, the discussion about LEDs and the ones that are harmful to wildlife and people. So just, that might be something to just share with them, maybe, to say, hey, just as an information item. I think they're sort of focused on some other things.
Yeah, they have a
But-
pretty strict, through the study that was conducted over those years, and came up with the Climate Action Advisory Committee. Those, they're very specific initiatives, and I think what the committee has been told is to very much so focus on those initiatives. Don't go outside of the lane.
Oh, okay.
Stay inside those initiatives, I think, to start with, and then kind of go from there. So that's
Well, they had a great description, though, of the whole issue. So once we have a spectacular bird strike, it'll probably hit the news. Okay. Any other information items? Does anyone have for the good of the group? Okay, then we'll go on to Park Board comments and any further discussion? Anyone? Then are we ready to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Josh? Who seconded first? Was that you, Mark, or Jonathan? You guys sound alike to me. Jonathan? Then I can declare us adjourned, correct? We are adjourned at 7:15. Thank you, everyone.